almost immediately after we wrapped Zooventure, Andrew Golder called me, and Andrew had, again, he was writer for me on Quicksilver and worked for me on other projects. Now he was producing a show called Debt, which was a parody, presumably, of Jeopardy, a satire. I don't know what you call. I don't want to call it a ripoff, but it was a pop culture, strictly pop culture and comedic version, we'll say, of Jeopardy, with similar categories and similar scoring. $500, $400, etc. I'm not going to explain Jeopardy to you. Anyway, I thought it was too close to Jeopardy, and evidently so did the buyers, because Jeopardy sued Debt. And so after the first season of Debt, they had to change the format a bit. And Dean Young, who had worked for me on Perfect Score, had been the producer first season. Andrew asked me to do the second season, which I said yes to. And I guess I said it too fast because I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. Debt was a writing intensive show. We had 7 writers on the show. You'd have to ask Harry how many writers he had on Jeopardy. Harry's retired from Jeopardy. But we had just some great writers. Michael Ferraro, I don't know if you know any of these people, Frank Nicotero, who wound up hosting a show as well. Ryan Hopak had won on the first season of Debt. He was so good, we made him a writer. Scott Halleck, Kevin Healy, who I had worked with before, but we had about 7 or 8 writers. That was the good news. The bad news was, because it was pop culture, I considered myself pretty well versed in all areas of music, television, motion pictures, and such. But because I had been working, as I guess you can figure out, so much, between Legends, Shop, Zooventure, etc., I had kind of missed about 2 or 3 years that I needed to know about in order to properly produce Debt. And by that, I mean, whereas, Harry with Jeopardy, if the category is the Byzantine Empire, I suppose there are ways, you can go to a variety of places and figure out, okay, well, this would be a harder question than this would be an easier question than this. But when it comes to, say, a movie that I had never seen, and I had to put those questions in order, I was perplexed as to how to do that. And in most cases, I had to defer to the writer, because the writer at least had seen that movie. And I'm trying to think if the internet even existed at that point. We're talking about 1995, 1996. So yeah, this was pretty much pre-internet, meaning I think the internet existed, but it was dial-up, and we certainly didn't have we were not hooked up. We had computers at the office, but we were not hooked up to the internet as it was at that point. So I couldn't use that. Yeah, it was just impossible. Andrew explained to me up front that, I was used to producing, being on the floor and producing, but he had that covered. And likewise, his head writer, Greg Sherman, who had worked on the first season, they were going to brief Wink. Wink Martindale, my old friend, was hosting it. So I was not devastated, but certainly disappointed, because, Wink and I had worked together coming up with shows. Wink and I had worked together doing presentations. Wink and I had done headline chasers together. And here, years later, yeah, gosh, it's going to be Wink and I. But Andrew said, no, you're not even allowed to go down to the set when there's so much writing to do. And there was. But for me, it was more rewriting, because with the 7 writers, each writer had their own style of writing questions. And the last thing you want on any show is to say, oh, that's by that one writer who uses too many adverbs, and that's written by the guy that doesn't know how to write. So, if I had to do anything, I guess my job was to create one voice for the 7 writers, which is not a terribly fulfilling job. And likewise, when you're producing a show or getting producer credit, which I got, it's executive producer Andrew Golder, producer David M Greenfield. But how am I the producer if I'm not even allowed to go down on the set and produce the show? To me, it was more of a head writer job. Suffice to say, I made it through. I was dealing with a contestant department. I was dealing with the writers, and at the same time, we were doing Debt. Andrew and Terry McDonald, who had also, of course, created Quicksilver, they were doing Win Ben Stein's Money, which Jimmy Kimmel hosted. And that was a terrific show. So yeah, my experience with Debt, it went okay. Again, if you would ask, would I do another season of Debt? No, because I'm a producer. I want to be on stage, on the set with the host, explaining, and yeah, and that. So yeah, that was Debt. Again, it was a ripoff of Jeopardy, but I'll say this for Andrew, who's just a brilliant guy. And Andrew, by the way, is producing the Penn and Teller show, which I told you Dennis Rosenblatt's directing. Ultimately, everybody in this town has worked together in some capacity, some way or another. So Andrew's doing very well on that. Andrew's a great producer, and they did. I mean, I'll give them this. The questions from all of the writers and the questions that I wrote as well. Everything ultimately went through Andrew. We would all get together and go over all the stuff that I did, and Andrew would put his stamp on every question, let alone every category, and did an exceptional job of executive producing that. I'm sure he's doing a great job on Penn and Teller too. Again, I'm not here to compliment people because I'm out of the business. I can say F you to anybody, but
wouldn't recommend you.
Oh, and
you worked with good people.
It was just terrific. I wish we were still friends. Last time I saw him, we went to a Springsteen concert, and I haven't spoken to him since.
Not because of something that happened, but just because of growing apart.
Yeah, growing apart. Yeah, he was also he got angry at me over a personal thing, something with
doesn't matter.
Something personal, yeah, whatever. But again, doesn't matter. Water under the bridge.